So this is another one today that I wasn't really anticipating, but I think it's an interesting thing to look at, concerning thing to look at actually, as we sometimes hear this expression about Big Brother Britain and oversight from officialdom, not oversight, excuse me, overreach by officialdom, and I think this is a good example. It's reported in the Daily Express, October the 22nd, and this is the report I'm referring to. I'm just going to read it out and share my thoughts. The report is by Max Chisholm. That's Chessom. A pensioner says her nostalgic trip to the UK was ruined after she was fined for overstaying in a car park by just 11 seconds. Brenda Reed, 78, returned to Kent from the US for the first time in 60 years as she wanted to revisit Margate's Winter Gardens with her niece, having seen the Beatles play there in 1963. She arrived at the wrong car park and was later fined for failing to leave within the 5 minute grace period by seconds before charges kick in. Mrs. Reed believed her crazy £60 ticket should have been torn up, arguing that signs at the town's Lido car park are not clear enough. She said, "We were looking for the Winter Gardens and realised we needed to go further up the coastline, so literally stopped the car, got out, realised our mistake and drove further up. It was a nostalgic visit for me and was totally ruined by receiving a £60 fine for pulling in and out of a car parking lot. There should be a 10 or 15-minute grace period." Mrs. Reid, who had flown from Nashville, Tennessee, appealed the fine. However, she was concerned the charge would rise to £100 pending a decision, so paid the £60 up front. Her appeal was rejected anyway. The fine was issued by enforcement firm Parking Eye, which used number plate recognition cameras. It said the rules were displayed on prominent and highly visible signs, but Mrs. Reid is not the only motorist who disagrees. Local resident Lucy Mwangi, 52, argued there was little consideration for tourists or those who do not know the area. She said, "I think they should give you more leeway because people keep getting caught out." Martin Police, 74, added that the onus was placed on drivers to seek out the rules rather than making restrictions as clear as possible. He said, "Whatever car park you go in, you've got to stop if necessary, get out of your car and read the signs. It's not right at all." Parking Eye said the car park has 14 prominent and highly visible signs that give motorists clear guidance on how to use the car park responsibly. So here we have a case of an elderly American tourist, and she's been fined for being over the allocated limit by 11 seconds. Um, this isn't the worst case I've heard. I remember a case a few years ago. Again, it was in the south of England, I think in Hampshire. Don't quote me on that. Where a man suffered a medical issue. I think it was a heart attack, and a woman went to his aid. Unfortunately, the man passed away anyway. But because she had went to his aid, she overstayed her parking by about 10 minutes, and she got a hefty fine leading up to Christmas. I think it was Euro car parks involved in that incident. And they didn't give any sort of mitigating circumstances at all. No consideration of the fact the woman was clearly reacting in an emergency situation. Um, I am very suspicious of these companies now. Disclaimer: I'm not a driver, so I've never personally experienced this. And when I hear about things like this, I'm almost pleased I'm not a driver, although certainly it would have advantages. Um, so you have this company claiming one thing, but local people saying another. If this was one case, it could maybe be dismissed as her mistake, but clearly it's happening a lot. So, you know, they're either being disingenuous or they're not understanding the public contention on this. I've looked at the website just out of interest, and it's quite a detailed website. There's a thing about how to pay your fine. There's a point for appeals. There's media inquiries. It's more detailed than some. I still think we have a lot of private companies in this country that have too much power, in the sense that they can threaten people and they can make these sort of arbitrary decisions. And I absolutely wouldn't put it past a company like this to threaten people. I'm not saying they have in this case, but um, I think they behave like thugs, basically. maybe people think I'm exaggerating, but I really don't like the sort of the way they go about things, and the pettiness of it. 11 seconds, I think there really should be some leeway there. Now, I can understand if she'd overstayed by, 20 minutes, half an hour or something. Obviously, you have to have some control, otherwise, cars will just pile up and it will be a mess. So I understand you need to have some control. But if this is happening a lot in Margate, then there should be some understanding of that. I do not like the way these companies behave. By the way, I should probably quantify my FUDs thing wasn't necessarily at this company. They're probably not the worst, but I do think there is an unpleasant way these private companies behave, um, and it isn't actually legally enforceable. It's apparently seen as a breach of contract, but they would intimidate people to believe that it is legally enforceable. Um, I think there's a real problem here because it gets into overreach and it gets into issues around civil liberty and how much power these people have to, bully people, basically. I really don't like it. Um, Now, their website's a little bit more professional than some. In the case of Europarks, it was very vague information. There was no contact number, there was no email address, no obvious point to sort of have some pushback. Um, so yeah, I'm not a motorist, but I know people in my family have had issues with these sort of private companies. In fact, I'm sure you won't mind me mentioning, my father has been falsely accused of overstaying um, parking allocation, and he actually hadn't. And the company in question, I'm not sure which one it was, but they threatened him. They kept threatening him with his fine. In the end, he proved that he hadn't overstayed it, and they had to make a groveling apology. In fact, I don't think they even did make an apology. They just, waived the fine that they were imposing. I think these are little people with a little bit of power. I don't get a good impression from them at all. I think they're little officials who have a little bit of power, and I think they abuse that power. If you have a lot of people saying that there's a problem here, then they need to listen to that. And clearly they're being disingenuous if they're saying the signs are clear. I'm just looking at a photograph here, and it doesn't look that clear. It's sort of convoluted with a lot of different information. Also, there has to be some leeway for tourists who may not know this very well, particularly in a place like Margate, which we get a lot of tourists. But I personally just don't get a good vibe about the way these companies behave. Because who are they accountable to? They're private companies, so the government can't, impose anything on them. Um, who are they accountable to? That's the aspect I don't like. The fact that they can just do this, bully people, and seemingly get away with it. If she hadn't paid the fine, it would have kept increasing. Um, so it's. Let me know your thoughts if you're a motorist. Have you ever had to deal with one of these companies? I personally feel the fact that they're private companies, the fact that there's no real oversight, the fact that they can act with impunity, apparently. What can a motorist do? All they could do is appeal the case. But, how many of these appeals are successful? Probably they will do everything they can to get money out of people. Um, and you know what? If I'm wrong about any of this, I I challenge them to reply in this video and tell me why I'm wrong. Tell me that they're not behaving this way. Tell me that they treat people fairly. I don't believe they do. Let me know your thoughts.